we will get going. Hello, everybody. We are the Shadowcasters Network. This is Shadowcasters Network Shadowrun Lore Q&A that we are hosting with three very, very special guests. But the first thing I wanted to say before we jump into that for those who are already here in the chat room is that you see that little, down at the bottom there on the screen, that little cup with the little things in it? That's for your subscriptions. If you throw a subscription our way, it'll pop in there. Also, if you know about Twitch cheers and bits and stuff, they'll land in there too. So fill that cup up. And otherwise, we're going to get to answering some lore questions today about Shadowrun. I'm going to get right into it. I got some questions that were sent to us ahead of time, but mostly I'm focused on getting you guys and your live questions answered for our experts here. Who I will call experts. Maybe they won't call themselves that, but I will call them experts. And yes, as Eric in the chat room is saying, reminding everyone that it will be really, really helpful if you send me, put a bunch of question marks at the beginning of your thing, your question, so I can spot it easier. And there we go. See, Relative D-Pod just sent us a bunch of bits. What was that? That number is too small for me to see. I think it's 29. I'll just say 29 because I see the 2, and I'll give you maximum credit. So 29. Thank you very much. Before we answer some questions, first thing I want to do is introduce our guests. All three of these guys here are freelance writers for Shadowrun. And one at a time, I'm going to introduce them. They're going to briefly tell us their expertise in the lore and why I've brought them here. I'm going to start with Russell Zimmerman, Rusty, and to introduce yourself, Rusty, and tell everybody what is it that you bring to our collective lore knowledge here.
How's it going, guys? I'm Russell Zimmerman, or Rusty. Most of my business stuff is under Russell, but I answer to Rusty like a dog. In most Shadowrun stuff, I'm either the elf guy, the adept guy, I guess the Puyolip guy. Yeah, just kind of a little bit of everything. I like adepts quite a bit. Old Way of the Adept book. So yeah, a little bit of a focused niche there. Generally, if it's got pointy ears, I have written about it in Shadowrun.
Yeah. You know a good bit about Native American stuff as well, don't you?
To an extent. It gets a little bit fuzzier there, and then I tend to focus more on like things Shadowrun gets wrong about real-life Native American culture. The historian bleeds over a little too much.
Right.
But yeah, a little bit.
Well, good. So next up, we've got Opti, or OC Presley is his pen name, and but we all know him as Opti, of course. So Opti, introduce yourself, and why did I invite you?
Well, first off, literally not one person has ever called me OC Presley. So I just use that as a pen name when I write Shadowrun stuff because using my real name creates problems, and using Opti would probably not have gotten me the job. So I go by OC Presley, only in the books, but Opti everywhere else. Everybody who knows me through Shadowrun calls me Opti. But you probably know me because I do a Shadowrun lore podcast called the Neo-Anarchist Podcast. Also a freelance writer for Shadowrun, one of the newer guys, especially compared to Rusty and Whack. But I am focusing mostly on the Neo-Anarchist stuff in Shadowrun. Also, the Redmond Barons, if I can get them, the Halloweeners, if I can get them, and a few other things along the way. Basically, anything that I can do to piss on Rusty's Cheerios makes me happy.
Yeah, well, don't we all want to just piss on his Cheerios?
Indeed.
And finally, our third guest is Thomas Willoughby. Many of you on the interwebs may know him as Wakshani. He's here and talking to us about lore as well. Introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I am the tenor to the much better sounding other two. And I guess I am the Fruit Loops to Rusty's Cheerios.
Gross.
I am... I'm the sugary one. How do you do? No. For me, I've done a lot of the tech stuff. I do drones. I do cars. I do all the cyber and bio. I've been. I also focus a lot more on the corporations and the corporate side of things. I was a big force for the latest edition of the cast that you've seen rolled out in Dirty Tricks. So I'm kind of all over the place. Whatever no one else wants to cover, they give to me, and I'm like, sure, I'll figure out how the endocrine system works in a 2-month period. Why not? So whatever, whatever they need, I'll step in for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's also one of the happiest, most encouraging dudes in the freelance pool that you will ever meet. Like, honestly, nothing gets this guy to say anything bad about anybody. Me and Rusty can be provoked pretty easily, but Wax always got something good to say about everybody.
Awesome.
I love everybody, man. I'm full of hugs.
That's
What
a
can I say?
great attitude to have. But you know what? We're here to answer some lore questions, so I'm going to jump right into it. And hey, Sea Monster 432 just sent us a subscription. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
And
Cookie.
let's
Sum
see.
it up.
We actually got, while we were introducing here, a fun little question to get the thought juices rolling. That's sorry to mix my metaphors. But how much it's I got to get good at grabbing the names. It was Tagashi Jack. Asked how much will could a how much it's literally a tongue twister. Hold on. How much will could my fixer William fix if my fixer could fix Will? I will ask. I'll ask Rusty that to answer that one.
I'm not sure what the baseline number would be, but if your fixer will is an adept, it's however much will a mundane could fix, like +3, if he maxes out that improved ability.
That's a perfectly cromulent answer in my opinion. So yeah, there you go.
I'll take one quick one at that one as well. As for the question of how much will could a fixer named Will could fix if he was fixing wills, the answer would be a fixer that fixes will would fix as many wills as a fixer that could fix wills would. So, man, I didn't quite hit that one.
My answer is this is a lore podcast, so take your crunch elsewhere.
Ooh.
There's
Excellent.
always room for a little crunch in the lore.
Excellent answer. I've got a question. While we're waiting for more questions to roll in, I have a question. It actually spawned from something that I was casually stealing knowledge from Opti on Facebook earlier, maybe last week. But it made me want to ask the question of Opti in particular, anybody else who wants to chime in briefly, is explain to me, I hear Opti, you talk about this a lot, or at least insinuate it, that there's big differences between the jack pointers or the current jack pointer fast jack and the previous head of all of that stuff before it was called jack point, which the name escapes me all of a sudden. But Captain Chaos is who I'm talking about. So what exactly are the differences? How are fast jack and Captain Chaos different?
You're specifically asking me?
Yes, because I know you have a lot to say about it.
I do. I just don't. I don't want to drown the other two out, and they've been around a lot longer than me. But they couldn't be more different. I mean, Fast Jack is essentially a Shadowrunner first. I mean that he's the definition of a Shadowrunner. Like, he just does what he does for whatever reasons he does it, and that makes him a criminal, not necessarily a bad guy, but he is a criminal, and he joins with other criminals, and he's set up this criminal host called Jack Point, and they talk about doing crime, and great. Like, if they get to know each other and they have relationships and they name each other's kids after each other, like, that's great. Like, that's what a family does. And no one ever says that criminals don't have family or care about people. But at the heart of it, like, Fast Jack is just, a really good decker, like one of the best, maybe even the best, although probably Rusty and I would put Dodger in that category. But nevertheless, he's just a guy who founded a thing to help him do more of what he does best and to keep the keep the heat off of him. But Captain Chaos was an idealistic crusader. He wanted to take down the corpse. He was a member of the North American neo-anarchist club, guild, group. Anyway, polyclub,
Union.
whatever you want to call
Union.
it. Union. He actively wanted to take Shadowland and source crime, not just crime for crime's sake, but crime because in his eyes, being a Shadowrunner and disconnecting and having and being sinless was the only sane response to an insane world that was ruled by the corpse and corporate greed gone amok. So I think Fast Jack is just not principled at all. He's just not. And at the end of at the end of 4th edition, what was that book called? Stormfront. I think you see Fast Jack's ultimate his ultimate ideals come to pass, in that he
Sure.
he values information and keeping it close to the vest and himself over even the lives of other people that he has contracted. And Captain Chaos would never do that. Captain Chaos actually died making sure that everybody possible, even people he wasn't necessarily connected to, had every chance to escape alive, and he went down with the ship trying to make that happen. So again,
How did
Captain
he die?
Chaos was he died during the Crash 2.0, fighting the Jormungand virus, protecting the. I'm gonna get myself in trouble here. I think this is right. He went down fighting the Jormungand virus at the Denver Data Haven, trying to make sure that his other Decker buddies had a chance to get out alive.
Okay.
And to save the information and to save the data.
Now, you mentioned that our other guests, Rusty and Wak, were have been around longer, and you didn't want to drown them out. Well, I got a question, a follow-up sort of question that maybe they'd be able to give us some insight to and join in here. And that is, so the transition from Captain Chaos to Fast Jack, in a lot of ways, I would say, kind of I guess you could, at least in my opinion, it sort of symbolizes a lot of the way that the tone and focus of Shadowrun in general has gone, right? From a hooding focus to more of a, Shadowrun, like the way you put it, like doing crime kind of focus, right? Was that sort of changing of the guard something that was done in order to mirror the real life change in tone of Shadowrun, or was it the other way around? Did that kind of like bring it in, or what? Or was it just completely unrelated?
I know that it happened before I started writing for Shadowrun, but I think it's absolutely symptomatic of that change in tone from, say, 1st edition to 4th edition.
Mm-hmm.
I think the larger reason for it, the justification that I've heard for the shift to Jackpoint, was that they felt like there were just too many people talking. Like there was just too much of the shadow talk, and they wanted to narrow it down to a set number of kind of consistent voices that would help carry the meta plot.
So the idea being Jackpoint is like this invite-only, closed community, so
Right.
you can limit the number of voices that are all speaking at once.
Right, and I think that was the decision that was made, as it's been explained to me after the fact, was to limit the voices on Jackpoint to experts, and everybody has their niche that they're supposed to fill. And unfortunately, for a while, like for Dev Girl, the niche is don't know anything, and so that's been changed over the years, but that was the general idea, was this switch towards professionalism and expertise. And I think the shift away from neo-anarchism towards, heat and collateral, right? Like those like slick crime movies. I think that was a side effect, or maybe was going on kind of alongside it, as opposed to the two being purposefully done. But I think that they definitely happened at the same time.
Sure.
And I think that they definitely kind of fed off each other, because there was this change in tone away from stick it to the man, and towards get paid by the man.
Yeah, but I can definitely see that too many voices justification. I remember reading some of the old source, but a little while ago I was doing some research on lore related stuff, and I was reading through some of that stuff, and it was like it was an avalanche of different names. I couldn't keep track of them. I remember I was actually keeping them on a list, and that list was huge just from looking at one book. So I can understand that. I do feel like now there are characters in Jack Point that I feel more connected to, maybe. Now, that full disclosure, I didn't exactly follow Shadowrun Lore very closely back in the day and everything, so maybe I would have felt more connected if I had, but
You probably would not have. The Shadowland BBS stuff was all over the map, and there weren't a lot of reoccurring characters.
Yeah,
There were a few, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, and I think that's where some of the attachment to guys like Captain Chaos comes from, is that he was one of the few. You know, I mean, there weren't a lot of recurring commentators, and the ones that there were, like the Smiling Bandit, you know, and even Fast Jack, and you know, some of those guys, it was less common for them to be coming back. So when they did, fans really kind of glommed onto them.
Like Laughing Man, for example, was another one of those where, you know, if you weren't in the know, then like it was still a big deal, you know, that he posted, because he always posted heavy shit.
Yeah.
Heavy Drek. Sorry for cursing on the family show.
Yeah,
we can take that out later.
Angry
Every time we do, we're
emails
gonna
from
trim
all of
a little
our
off.
10-year-old listeners.
Edit it in post.
So Walk, to kind of close off the Fast Jack question, and I don't know if you have an answer for this, but you haven't had a question thrown directly at you yet. So to close off the Captain Chaos thing, we did have a question earlier that came from our good friend Eric DeMage. He asked, "Is Captain Chaos still alive somewhere in the Matrix?"
Okay.
Yeah, Whack, take that one.
I am going to go back to the earlier question.
You know, that's one of my
because
favorite
I'm
tricks.
that way.
The best answer, I'm going to answer your question by answering a question of my own.
Because I've been reading since '89. I've been in the pool for. I can't believe I've been here longer than you, Rusty. That just sounds wrong. You were
Attitude's where I started.
Man, that's crazy. Okay, but so I've gotten to write some for Fast Jack and for and the World Without Him, and yes, the big switch over from Captain Chaos and Shadowland to Fast Jack and Jack Point. Everyone on Jack Point when it began had been personally invited by Fast Jack. They were all people he felt could be of use to him. That's the main thing. It is a gated community. It's a source of knowledge for himself primarily, but to share with a close-knit group of people that he not necessarily trusted, but could use.
Sure.
Captain Chaos, on the other hand, was disseminate information, get that out there to as many people as possible. Wouldn't be as high of quality, wouldn't as be as experts only in the field. It'd be a lot of rumors, and of course things like Fane and Fan popping in with "Go Marchers" on a regular basis, which I was so happy I got to put that into a modern book. Yeah, so it's a completely different philosophy on how to organize it. As Rusty pointed out, Dev's spot was to be, the know-nothing who asks all the questions. She's grown up, and we've done, great work with giving her personality and her own storyline and things for that are in the future. But we do need some new blood to come in, because that's one of the problems when you have a field of only experts, and then you have a book come out that's like Magic 101.
Sure.
You need someone there to ask those questions and go, what are metaplanes? I don't know these things.
Yeah.
So, someone to kind of walk the new people through is to have a new person ask this. So,
well, I heard that there was this adventure that was written recently with this amazing character. His name was Complex Bobby. He doesn't know anything about Shadowrunning. But anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, so you'll notice that the Jack Pointers have mostly expanded. A few have been killed off, but have mostly expanded, and we have added new people, including some rookies who don't know anything, we can then have asked all of these questions and then teach them, and through them teach the audience. And that's very important, and that's one of the things we did miss in that transition.
Yeah.
As for Captain Chaos, whether or not he's alive is a big mystery. If you read System Failure, you'll see that when he died, it wasn't necessarily the end, and there have been plenty of rumors since then but nothing that we can point to concretely and say yes or no since then.
Sure.
So the body of Captain Chaos is dead. As for the rest, question mark?
Ooh. Hey, I wanted to
Way to be nimble.
I see what you did there.
Yeah.
I'm a good dancing fatty.
Avenzi just sent us 100 bits or cheers. I don't know how. What's the proper term? I don't know. Barely.
Cheers.
Although I don't know if we should really thank him. I mean, it is our good friend Damien. So.
That's a Venti?
Avenzi? Yes, of course he is.
Oh. Hey, what's up, Damien?
Garde-Manger asked a question, and it was this: why did grounding go away? Did mages just decide to be fair?
It's so unfair for us to just
Explain
blow
what
the
ground
away.
before anybody decides to jokingly or not answer this question. Explain what grounding is.
Hey, you guys want me to take it?
Sure, go for it, Russ.
Okay. Imagine, if you will, investing thousands of new yen and a bunch of karma into getting yourself your badass magic item of a focus. And then imagine some really, really mean security mage casting fireball at you from the astral plane through your focus into real life and one-shotting your team.
Well,
that's
I don't want to
grim.
imagine that, Rusty.
Yes. It was just a way to kind of mess with foci from the astral. And it was great because Shadowrunners could do it and they could feel really cool. But then it was garbage because the GM could flip the script and NPC Shadowrunners could do it and security mages could do it and stuff like that. I think it was purely done away with for game dev purposes, just as a way to not punish people for having a focus, I would say, and to not offer that back door for when enemies have a focus. I guess I don't remember what the lore explanation was, but I imagine it would be something about the mana level stabilizing or improved techniques in focus design that shut that back door. Kind of like we just say that die coat is on everything now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it's kind of the same thing. Like, unified magic theory led to focus creation being more stable, or something like that.
That's
If you're not,
Go ahead.
If you're
what?
not sure, I was gonna say, if you're not sure, blame it on the comet.
Yep.
Everything
There you go.
magic went crazy when the comet came.
Oh.
And
That
All
damn
the
comet.
focuses, every
Yep.
focus in the world got surge and it mutated
there you
into
go.
a focus without grounding.
Good
Man.
enough for me. We have
There was
a.
a lore explanation to it. I'm trying
Really?
to rack my brain to think of where it was. I'll come back to it if I find
All
it.
right, Sea Monster 432, who helped us out just a couple minutes ago with a subscription, says, "Is there any official lore on the St. Louis, Nashville/Memphis area?"
Oh yes. We
Next question.
Yeah, done.
Um,
Next question.
the definitive one for that is Dirty Tricks. Has a huge section on St. Louis, the divided city, which is split between UCAS and CAS, and is a hotbed for smuggling and Shadowrun activity. Memphis and Nashville and Knoxville are all part of the Vol Sprawl, which is a sprawl that interlinks almost with the Atlanta Mega Sprawl, but basically goes from the west end of Tennessee to the east end of Tennessee and is very popular with riggers. And in fact, there is a competition, kind of like the Kessel Run, of making it from one end of the Vol Sprawl to the other, that is done based off timing. If you can do it faster than anyone else, then you get to be, the hotshot rigger of note. But lots of sheriffs and stuff patrol the area to shut people down. So another way to measure it is how far along the path did you get before you were caught. It's like, oh, I did the Vol Sprawl in 284 miles. It's like, ooh, that guy's good.
Yeah.
But yes, so Dirty Tricks is your go-to source. It's tons of stuff about the cast, some good stuff about the UCAS, some other world political stuff that people overlook easy, but it's a really cool book. Recommend it highly.
Excellent. We got another question from. This was sent by Garde-Manger as well, and I like this one because it's something that I've asked before. and I always forget the answer, if there even is an answer, which is what makes great dragons great?
Their ego.
Is that just it?
No.
No.
It's an age and power thing. I think it primarily comes from longevity more than anything else, but it's mysterious dragon magic stuff.
Has it?
That,
I feel like
grants you
either
additional-
someone told me one time or I read it somewhere that it was insinuated there might be some kind of ceremony involved.
There's probably some
Yeah.
draconic ritual stuff, and
It's on the level
Yeah.
of like draconic initiation, but like I think on purpose and for good cause that is never ever talked about what that might look like. Like that's beyond mortal ken, even for freelancers. We're not meant to know. Like there's some things that are probably best left alone, but there is a difference between like a great and a non-great. It's not just a, you've been accepted into the club, but neither is it just a natural outcome of them getting more powerful. Like it's a both and.
Yeah, there is a definite switch, like you said, a draconic initiation that happens. We know Masaru's gone through it. We know a couple of the current lesser dragons are looking to reach that new level themselves. And we know that Rumio, and for the record, by the way, if you people haven't heard me on this before, I will mispronounce everything. But Rumio has been working with dragon lines to try and evolve himself to a greater dragon, something above the great dragon level. But what that could be, we don't know, and how that mechanic works, we don't know.
Greatest dragon.
Exactly, like Grand Dragon. Oh no, that's a bad use. No, that would. He's going to lead Renraku at that point, and
all right, guys, I'm out.
Wow. Okay. I
This
didn't
went
think that
downhill
was through.
fast.
That's the mouth is a little faster than the brain. How you doing?
So theoretically, could there be a non-great dragon that was more like had more power levels than than a great dragon?
No, the lesser dragons are all officially under 9,000.
Okay.
I think they could in an area of expertise.
Sure.
I think that it might not be something that the Shadowrun mechanics can really cover. Like when you look at the difference between spellcasting 8 and spellcasting 9, it maybe doesn't feel right, but I'm sure that there are lesser dragons or normal dragons that know stuff great dragons don't know. Right,
Like
and
Harry
that
Andrew knows music better than anybody else.
yeah, like he's the greatest music dragon.
He can cast those fashion
But
spells
I'm not-
way
but I'm
better
not
than
sure
Lofur.
that really mechanically means a lot to a Shadowrunner.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I'd say that there are certainly, areas of expertise or specialties that normal dragons could have where a normal dragon could outclass a great dragon at a thing.
Sure.
But I'd say, overall part of that putting the capital G great in front of your name is probably, I think that the initiation is a good way to think of it because it's probably a pretty clear step up in ability for most things.
Yeah. That's good because I think I felt like somewhere that there is something bigger, but it's interesting to know that it's well, it kind of jives with what we think about dragon culture in Shadowrun anyway. That's very political, but also strangely arcane and mysterious at the same time.
By the way, Bobby, I have an answer for the grounding question
Yes,
in lore.
give it to me.
In the Shadowrun 2050 book, it discusses the decline of grounding. And the leading theory suggests that early on in the period after the Awakening, the astral plane was in flux, and it was in such chaos, and the veil was so thin at a certain point that it allowed for odd and chaotic things to be done with magic. But now that the astral is strong enough in and of itself, and it's like almost has a greater surface tension, that practitioners are no longer able to overpower it and force physical spells into corporeal space.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. You'll see some of that touched on in Forbidden Arcana too. So,
Okay.
Which, if you read Forbidden Arcana, Whack wrote every good bit, and the rest of us just help.
It's the only magic thing I've ever done. I'm the tech goober, so don't throw that on me.
We got a question from Avenzi, who, by the way, holds his name is sitting up there on the screen saying he threw us 100 bits, and I really kind of hate that guy. So if someone could knock his name off the top there, that would really make me feel really good. He says he's got a Matrix/AI question. Okay, so I'm quoting him here, and I'm trying to be dramatic about it. Okay, so he says, so we know that some crazy stuff went on in Boston. We started to hear the name of one of my Avenzi's favorite bad guys surface again. For those that maybe aren't up on the meta plot, what part has Deus played so far in regards to it, being the meta plot? And he says basically he's fishing for Deus information.
When 10 AIs is released, which was written when Fast Jack was still the moderator of the board, you will see more about that. But until it's out, I can't say anything on that side.
But what can you say?
You're a lot of help, Wack. Way to go.
I know. I'm sorry. That book was supposed to be out 5 years ago, man. I'm sorry. Ebooks. Sometimes there's a backlog. Beyond that, there are many parts of Deus that were created to escape. Going back a bit, to escape from the Renraku arcology, he broke himself into 1,028 pieces, and had those placed into different people. And as they left the arcology, they were trying to reassemble him on the Matrix based on who was logged in. Of those pieces, some of them were then subverted by Magira. It's a whole complicated thing. Read System Failure for more info on that. But some of those chunks may still be out there. Now, each of those chunks may think of itself as the one and only Deus, but that doesn't mean they are. We don't know if there's a conglomeration of several of those in some place. We don't know if the one that Pax was using is something that thinks it was Deus, or if it was one of those chunks, or if it was a conglomeration. We don't have confirmation at this time. But I can tell you without a doubt, one person really wants to know, and that is Puck.
Yeah.
The most that you're going to get out of Deus in 5th edition is going to be in the Boston Lockdown book, where at least a very good chunk of his programming was captured and inserted. Man, should I spoil this?
You know what? Can I say that you're listening to a lore Q&A. If you didn't expect that there might be some spoilers, then I'm sorry.
All right, fair enough. So the intention behind the Boston lockdown, or the event that led to the biggest F up in the Boston lockdown, was Keladir, the Great Dragon, trying to reconnect. Goodness gracious, Eliohan, the Great Dragon's body, who he died in Crash 2.0. Eliohan did, and his soul / personality got saved under the Matrix as this AI named Cerberus. In Keladir's attempt to reconnect his soul to his body, gosh darn it. What was that? I get all my names mixed up. Was it Pax, the dissonant,
Pax, yeah.
the dissonant one, the dissonant techno? She was working on that project covertly and inserted Deus as well as Cerberus into Eliohan's body, and so Deus, the largest chunk and the most recognizable chunk of Deus, now resides in the body of Eliohan alongside Eliohan's earlier personality, now called Cerberus, and another chunk of Deus has merged with a part of Cerberus's personality and now calls itself Surius, which is kind of funny. And they're not in the dragon, but they're running amok underneath Boston University. So if you want Deus, just go read Lockdown, and that should keep you for a good long time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a good bit in there.
Where they go in the future, that hasn't been written yet. We'll see.
And
He's too good of a villain just to put to bed forever. But at the same time, I think he's had a pretty good run, and he's affected maybe too many plot lines at this point.
Mhm. Now, Cerberus, I should also point out, um, claims to be the mind of Eliahan that's been survived, but we don't know. We know when he was born. Again, system failure. You can see him being created out of nothing, or was it from nothing, or was it from something and then it just gestated? We don't know. We know where he was born. We know what died where he was formed before he was formed. Are they connected? We don't know. There's a lot of interesting aspects of that. And incidentally, Wonderland, which is where he was born and where his predecessor Alice died, is also featured in 10 AIs. Yay, promo. Okay.
He's pitching a book that may never come out.
I know. If it never comes out, if Jason ever tells me it's canceled, I'll send it to the internet and everyone can poke fun and poke holes in it. It was the second thing I ever wrote. I love it. I'm sorry.
He's trying to generate hype so that it takes on a life of its own.
One day. One day.
I got a question for you, Rusty. This is a question that I thought up earlier, and I thought that you might be able to help me answer. But before I would like to point out that Unexiled and T-Cut both knocked Avenzi off of the banner there by subscribing and giving us stuff, and that makes me exceedingly happy to see Damien's screen name.
T-Cut 95.
But so the we got another one right then. T-Cut again. 60. Well,
yeah.
I just love the animation where it's just pouring into the cup there. I'm a child, and I've also never. This is all new to me. I'm like a Twitch dweeb. Anyway, so the question I have, Rusty, has to do with is what I talked. I know that you have a. I don't know how. I know you at least have a particular interest in actual Native American history and culture and whatnot.
Some, yeah.
But I was thinking, and I know I've heard you talk about this sort of topic that's tangentially connected to Shadowrun, which is that Native American culture historically played a big role in Shadowrun history in the first editions of everything, but not so much in the past decade, at least in the past decade. Why was it so strong to start? Was it sort of like a topical thing going on at the time? I was younger when it happened, so I wasn't very aware of the world. Or is it just something that like FASA or Jordan Wiseman in particular was interested in?
I am firmly convinced that a great deal of early FASA work, whether we're talking Shadowrun or BattleTech, not to cross the streams too much, but a lot of it is just completely based on kind of an ethnically stereotyped rule of cool. In that if you look at, the great houses in BattleTech, it's samurais and ninjas and knights and stuff. And you see a lot of the same things in Shadowrun that was coming out at kind of the same time, where whatever happened in a place, right? Whatever weird stuff magic did or various plagues did and matrix crashes did, the end result around the sixth world was that everything reverted to something awesome and based on like a cultural stereotype of that place, right? So you've got druids and stuff in Great Britain. You've got samurai and ninja all over Japan. You've got, right, like kind of all the stereotypes, and you've got kind of cowboys and Indians in America, because that's what we got, right? Like that's right. Our kind of golden age historical stereotype was like the Western genre. So everyone's got cool dusters again and big chunky revolvers, and there's a lot of Native Americans to fight,
and there's a Confederacy again.
Exactly. It's the same sort of thing where we rolled the clock back to something iconic, and then Shadowrun made it badass. And I think that was where a lot of the Native American stuff came from. It was just a way to break America up into a bunch of pieces, because that's how you're reading a cyberpunk dystopia.
Right.
And B, it was a way to add a layer of magic, because that's kind of what we tend to think of if we think of magic in America. This is pre-Harry Potter and stuff. We think, oh yeah, Native American shamans and stuff. And later you saw some, Wild West RPGs with like hucksters that do like gambling magic with hands of cards and stuff. But that came later. That came after Shadowrun. So I think it was a way to layer magic on top of American stereotypes and try to get something cool. I think we've shied away from it in recent years because, like a lot of the other kind of ethnic stereotype rule of cool FOSSA stuff from the late 80s, it's really kind of terrible by modern standards in a lot of ways. It's really easy to make it like ugly stereotypes. So
I don't want to totally disagree with Rusty, and I don't, but I think there was also a layer of trying to pay homage in a way. Like they weren't trying to be stereotypical or offensive. Like they were saying, like in a perfect world, you know, the American capitalists would get their comeuppance for messing with the you know the better, more noble savages. That's not a good way to look at Native Americans, but at least I think that's what they were going for when they said, "Hey, watch this. The Native Americans get their own, you know, group of nations." Ha ha ha. I think that didn't age well, but I think they meant well at least.
Yeah, like I said, I think it was fine at the time, and it was pretty awesome. But when it feeds into a lot of perhaps well-intended but still ugly stereotypes, the first lecture of my History 1301 classes, the first PowerPoint presentation was called "Native Americans Were Not Magical Woodland Creatures." Right. And that was a lecture I had to give college students every semester. Right. It was like they don't, you know, because you know it's
because they grew up with like Pocahontas and
right. Well, and because those are stereotypes that they act like Native Americans are gone now. Right. And that's an easy way to sweep it under the rug and act like they're not still one of the most vulnerable, one of the most oppressed, one of the most disenfranchised people populating this country. But B, the stereotype of the noble savage is still a stereotype of a savage. Right. And when you talk about living in harmony with nature, you know, that's what animals do. Humans don't. We modify our environment with our people thumbs and our people brains, and Native Americans did modify their environment when they ran the place. You know, there were burnings of the Great Plains. Great Plains didn't happen completely by accident. It was a way to modify their environment and control the game. There were huge dams. There were stores of grain. You know, it's, you know, like I said, I think that they're well-intended stereotypes. In that we're like, look at how awesome these guys are, and the environment would be in better shape and blah, but I think it just doesn't age well, and I think, you know, also some of it's just math. You know, if you look at the numbers involved in taking over a country, you know, some of that kind of fell apart, and they backpedaled away from that in earlier editions, where they were like, we changed the definition of native to be like 1/16. Right, you know, and stuff like that. So, I don't know. It's I will go with mildly problematic.
Sure. Opti, I think you were trying to cut in and say something, or did I mishear that?
No, I was just gonna say like emblematic of that is in Shadowrun where we tend to take a shaman and just throw a headdress on somebody and go, look, you know, Native American cool, and I've gotten back and forth on this from Native American posters who say, A, that's really dumb. We don't wear headdresses. And then also I've gotten Native Americans who write in and say, it's really cool to see my culture represented and I don't find this offensive at all. And I think the line between those two is, do you have a relationship with a Native American person enough to know that what you're doing is not offensive? If you don't know any Native American people and you just throw a headdress on somebody, that's problematic. You know, if you're involved in the culture, you have relationships, and you are doing it, you know, in a reverent way, it's probably because you know somebody and you're doing it well. So I think that's what Shadowrun doesn't do well. Is there's not a whole lot of Native American writers of Shadowrun at the moment, like going around, you know, treating it with respect. We're just going like, wow, headdresses are cool looking on cards. Let's do that. Yeah, so that's a problem.
On that topic, this is the Crossfire box art here. Let me see if I can find.
Oh God!
There we go.
I'm about to throw it.
That's Koi Dog, wearing like a big tribal headdress from a Plains tribe, and I'm
Oh,
still
yeah, yeah.
really, really pissed off about this. But that was a last-minute addition to that artwork, and I did the intro fic for Crossfire, and like they were going undercover, sneaking into the building dressed as like janitors. And then the artwork changed, and suddenly she's got on this giant headdress that is, super practical streetwear. So even ignoring that
Rusty,
she's
it was
not
just a
from that
native.
tribe,
It was just a native janitor. They always wear
Yeah.
it.
Exactly. Yeah, she's like,
That was-
we're from Redmond Janitorial Services.
oh,
This is part of our uniform. But
Well,
I
and I
tried-
remember reading Rusty's fiction where Coy Dog is like, "Look, I'm not that kind of person. Stop stereotyping me. I'm just a street person." And
Yeah,
then like,
yeah.
and everything, she's like an elf. Like. Anyway, it's problematic. I don't
yeah,
like.
and I tried to change the intro fic so that while they were unpacking their Shadowrunner gear, Gentry's like, aha, you lost the bet. You got to wear this. And like, I tried to make it like a prank that the two of them, 'cause she's a coyote shaman.
I
and
love that.
sometimes so I tried to make it like part of a prank war, but that edit didn't make it in. So I was like, damn it. Like, I felt like I was doing the best I could, to explain why this, Salish tribal is wearing this big plains headdress on an undercover op.
That's wonderful.
But to me, like that's the example
That's wonderful.
of just slapping extra feathers onto stuff
Yeah.
in the wrong way.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
So
I have
it
a.
happens.
And that's a great answer to that question. That was awesome. But I got another question from that was sent to me ahead of time. I'm going to throw at you, Wak.
Okay.
That was it has to do with corporations and stuff. And you said that you're particularly interested in that.
Yep.
It was from someone who goes by the name of Not Wizard, which I love that name. It's KNOT, Not Wizard. Maybe they were a
You're
sailor.
gonna give us the rope a dope.
The question they asked was very simply, what is the corporate court and how did it begin?
Oh boy. Okay. I will skip over. I had a thing to do with history of FASA and AIM, the American Indian Movement from the late 70s, and I'm going to skip over that though. The corporate court. This one is fun. Basically, this goes back to first edition Shadowrun before everything was really established, where a lot of rules weren't the same, the world was different. This is when we talked about famine more. I say we, like I was on the writing team then. I'm not that old. But the corporate court was established when several corporations got it into their head to go to war with each other. And while war is good for business, eradication is not. And the damage was so great, not to each corporation, but to collateral damage, which is the people who buy stuff were dying and couldn't buy stuff, and that was bad. So the main corporations of the world got together and hashed out a deal that said, okay, we're going to have to sit on this and keep control of everything and keep the world from spiraling quite that crazily. So when corps get out of line, it's up to us to step in and deal with it. When we get to the line, but the little guys, they're going to have to do what we tell them. It's never worked out flawlessly, and we have still not truly seen an Omega Order in effect, which is the death penalty for a corporation, which is...
Ever?
We have not ever seen it. We have gotten close. There was one that has happened, and I'm going to forget the name of the corporation, and even though I wrote about it, crud. But there was one that was eradicated that no one ever talks about. But then the second time was As Technology, when when Aslan nationalized all the property there of other corporations. The corporate court went, I don't think so, and gave him a big shot across the bow, and they were like, hey, let's have a timeout and talk about this, and redid everything, and that's actually how As Technology got onto the corporate court itself. So it's a big long thing, and because Jason will love me for promoting products, check out the latest corporate guide for more on that history, because we got to write about that, and that was fun. So,
the one Omega Order that has gone under, or that has occurred, really bugs me, because it was against a megacorp that we never got to see, because the Omega Order was done in 2042, 8 years before the game starts, and it was an East Jerusalem-based company. So it was like, hey, look, the Middle East can't have nice things. It really, I'm like, really, you guys had to, make this corp up to show that it had been destroyed, that it was this prior one, and it's taken a long time to try to get any traction to get anything really going in the Middle East since then. But it always bugged me that the one time there was a full Omega Order that actually, salt the earth, screw everything over, was against a Middle Eastern corp, and we've never really gone back to it.
So this is a related question, and I'll ask it in this way, which is then, are those Omega Orders, is that the way that the corporate court sort of projects its power through fear, or are there other ways that that's done?
No,
it's
that's
the ultimate way, but I think in more practical terms on an everyday basis, they have way more tools in their tool belt. But that's the ultimate one that keeps people in line.
Yeah,
that's like the Death Star.
Yeah, the economic strength is by far and away the strongest aspect. Now, I will give you a little backdoor stuff here. On the Boston lockdown, part of the book has an adventure in there, and at the end of it, the players get their hands on some very sensitive information, and you get to decide which corporation you give it to, or if you give it to anyone. And that information, the feedback from that was announced that we were going to be killing off a Big Ten member. One member of the corporate corp was going to die. And I don't know if it was officially noted that that was going to be a big part of which one it was or not, but that was a big influence of it. So when that was going on, I went through and I had to go and figure out how to kill every single one of the Big Ten if necessary. So, and that includes the ones with the golden ticket who are there for permanent membership that you can't get rid of. I had to figure out a way to get rid of that too. And so Omega Orders, I had to look into them. I had to look at what happens if you get removed from a corporate justice. Which is, incidentally, for those who don't know, the only difference between a AA corporation and a AAA corporation is, do you have a judge on the 13-member corporate court? That and that alone determines if you are a AAA court. So I had to look at all kinds of things on how to do it, and so I seeded a lot of back doors, and it's like, well, what if we kill Ares? Well, then this and this and this. What if we kill Seder Krupp? This and this. What if we kill Shiawase, the first corp? Woo-hoo-hoo. Well, this and this. So I'm not going to tell you which one it is, but I can say that you've been reading if you've been reading the books for a while, there's a pretty good chance you can guess who it is.
It's already happened. It's already happened.
Have we pulled the trigger on that? Yep. I didn't think we officially had.
It's not published yet, though, is it?
Yeah.
It is?
Last couple books, Cutting Aces, Complete Trog. There's probably one more piece left to come. Never mind.
Yeah. But say I haven't read.
But still, read between the lines, folks. Come on. Yeah, it's happened.
Yeah,
it's happened.
So that's a great answer. I've got another one that just came from I'm gonna butcher this. Monteus says, so in Shadowrun there are space stations and stations on Mars. Is there any other presence documented, for example, on the moons of some of the gas giants, or on asteroids, or anywhere else?
No.
Yes.
No.
Maybe Wax got something I don't.
In addition to the Mars base, Evo has launched something towards Titan. To my knowledge, we don't have any documentation on whether or not that was successful, but that was something they were working towards before Mars blew up on them. The moon, we have several stuff. Space stations, there's, 2 dozen? I know there's a ton. There's also, is it Helios or Icarus? Ares has one that's around Mercury that's a solar-based research area. So it's way on the inner planets. But yeah, there's a surprising amount of space stuff out there if you want to hunt it down.
I want to hunt it down.
Then do it. I've got another question from user in the chat here, Credstick, who asks a Credstick related question, which
Nice.
is
Well done.
yeah, I love it. His name is also in gold. They were talking about it in the chat. His name is also in gold, so there's a gold Credstick. Question: why is there no longer a clear definition on Credsticks anymore, as there was in early editions? I think, and further, I will add to that. Are Credsticks? How useful are they anymore?
That's the whole reason that they're not well defined anymore, is because I think mirroring real life. I mean, you can already see like the Bitcoin stuff is taking off and PayPal and stuff like that. It's just Credsticks is kind of a passe way to say, like back in the 2050s, like we're in the 1980s, like it was really cool to say like, look, everything's on a little stick. But like that's not edgy anymore. It's just like, here's my USB. Like everybody's got a USB in their pocket. Like it's not that edgy anymore. So I think everybody just kind of has a little hand wavy cred stick that links to their account. It's just not exciting anymore.
It's just moved away.
Fourth edition pretty well ate them, and that's tragic. I would love to do an ebook or something to talk nothing about, or to talk about nothing but how the finances work in the sixth world now. They'll never give me the opportunity. But
No, they won't.
I want to do it.
Nobody's gonna buy that book.
Because no one cares. No one is going to buy that book. I know.
No one's going to help you write it.
Oh,
Nobody wants to read the pitch for that.
I know. It's so sad. It's.
NAI's whack.
But I'm like, money is important. You need to know the finances and how to deal with the cash, and no one cares. Oh,
if it doesn't have an extra gun in it, nobody's gonna buy it.
Yeah, I know.
Like unless it gives you +1 money. Then
yeah. Basically, everything moved to your comlink, including your wallet. So everything is done digitally. No one pulls out a checkbook anymore. So it's just a sign of the times. But some of us still believe.
Yeah. Well, and I think checkbook is the way to look at it, right? And that it used to be a paper check was the way to transfer a large sum of money without having to carry cash. And that used to be what a cred stick did. It was a cool kind of iconic, it was plastic, which meant modern, way to have an amount of money. And then they had different bands on them. People were joking about the gold cred stick, but they had like colored bands that had different maximum amounts of new yen that they could hold. And they also had increasing security parameters on them up to cellular scan. So like it was like a DNA test built into this thing, but if you look at it today, we kind of roll our eyes if the old lady in front of us at the grocery store pulls out her checkbook.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's kind of the same thing when somebody is busting out a cred stick. It tells you something about them. So I think it can still be pretty cool. I like cred sticks because they are a physical thing for Shadowrunners to like fight over and take. And I really want to write a fight scene someday where somebody gets stabbed like in the neck with a cred stick.
Yes.
Like very ironically killing someone with the MacGuffin, but so I think, they're still around. Much like paper money is still around to an extent.
I think you hit on something there, Rusty. Also, is what I tend to use cred sticks for, which is a less traceable form of currency, like how many people want to use currency today. There's a lot of talk today about switching to no paper or physical money, but a lot of people hold on to that because they want that non-traceable way to do for transactions, and that's how I tend to use cred sticks.
And that'd be a fun character, right? Who like only wants cred sticks, who like carries around big boxes of cred sticks. But that's not how.
Well, yeah, and I made up a character one time that was like super paranoid, right? And had like the lifestyle option of bolt holes and moving around and everything. But all their money they just had tons of cred sticks, and that's where they would always keep them.
Right, and that's fun. That's RP
yeah.
gold. But it's a joke to suggest that like everybody in the sixth world would just carry around boxes worth of cred sticks. That's just not how it works.
Now, one thing I'll touch on that's vaguely related, but not really. Plastic in the future. I don't think it's come up much, but plastic is virtually dead in Shadowrun as you think of it because of the oil shortage. Some of it is artificially made or made through bioplastic, but a lot of it's been replaced with paper and cardboard. So packaging is less like a plastic disposable bottle of pills. It's like a fancy kind of Japanese bento box of pills. The Japanicorps have a real lockdown on that part of things. Just throwing it out there. No one, again, will ever buy my...
I have never thought about that, and it's something I did not know. So
yeah,
you did me a solid and taught me something.
I will eventually the ebook on how things are packaged in the sixth world.
10 boxes.
You need to do like 10 things you've never cared about in Shadowrun, and like that'll be a cool book. 10 things that you didn't know you wanted to know.
Just publish a listicle, Walk, and
Hey, well, what face is on the quarter coin in cast? You know, I've got
10 things Whack cares about.
All right, I've got another question from a person that I will make unnamed because I know who it is, and I think they're just trolling us. Which is that whole Asimando destroys the sixth world with HMHVV plot going forward, and won't that just ruin the franchise?
Yes, yes.
Well, no, and yes.
I should also note I talked with some of the freelancers this past week about removing Asimando from the equation because of that little thing that goes around. So, yes,
we do. I have had some talks this week about something involving Asimando. So it's not like it's not out of our eye all the time.
Yeah,
it's there. It's a fun thing, and the fact is, it's too fun to have an entire nation full of ghouls with a ghoul queen ruling it. Like that's just too fun of a thing to have running around to just kill it. At the same time, we do need to moderate that because
there are things.
Like the rest of the setting.
Yeah, but as an aside, you will notice
that's where season 9 of the missions should have gone. By the way, keep going.
You will notice there is a lot more focus on Africa this time. A ton of us have all sat around many times and gone, "Why aren't we touching an entire continent?" And
yeah,
so
I've heard that things are moving in that direction.
Our attempt to fix what Rusty mentioned earlier, like Middle East, no, like the whole Western and Asia centric thing, where the '80s, that everything was us and Asia. I think we're moving beyond that slowly. God, I wish it was quicker, but yeah, we're trying to get more Middle East and Africa in there. In fact, no, I can't say that.
Right, we can't talk about some of that. But I can say again, the latest corporate book, you'll see both Mitsuhama and Renraku are doing a lot of stuff in Africa. So if you haven't seen your runners there, you should.
Cool.
And if you pick up Anarchy and Cutting Aces, you'll see the Middle East moving forward pretty mightily.
Yep.
And if you're interested in AAA stuff and potential AAA stuff, Spinrad and Global Sandstorm are doing some heavy stuff in the Middle East. So if that's something you're interested in, check those out.
Yep.
Awesome.
On the Native American side, by the way, you can check in Cass in the Dirty Trick section, and in the new Seattle box set on Council Island, there are a lot of updates for the Native Americans and their political ramifications with the CAS and UCAS, and you should probably check that out too. It's very interesting stuff.
And all the Shadows in Focus books recently that have dealt with some of the Native American nations. So we're trying to do better.
Yeah.
All right, so great. I've got another question that's good. That the questioner directly directed at you, Walk. But before I do that, I want to remind everybody, it's been about an hour. We're about halfway through this whole thing, but that Damien in the chat mentioned this earlier, and it made me think that I should remind a lot of people, and I need to do a better job of reminding you. Subscriptions help us out a lot on the Shadowcasters Network Twitch channel here, and there is a way that a lot of people probably don't know about who don't spend a lot of time on Twitch, but might be Amazon Prime members. Amazon Prime has sort of a partnership with Twitch that gives every Amazon Prime subscriber or person who's on Amazon Prime has one free months of subscription that they can use on Twitch that they can send to anyone. What you do is you just, whoever your favorite streamer is on Twitch, which is, it's got to be us, right? Whoever your favorite streamer is, you throw that free subscription to them, and it doesn't cost you anything. It's free, but it gives the streamer the same benefit as if you were just an actual paying subscriber. So if you don't do anything with subscriptions, but you are an Amazon Prime person, you might consider doing that for us. It'd help us out. And if you have one, just throw it our way. Also, he reminded me that right now Twitch is in the middle of what they're calling, I think, September, where all paid for subscriptions are, I think, half off right now. So if you're considering maybe doing that, then you can send it our way, and we actually don't get half the credit for that. We get the full credit. So it's just a savings that's for you guys. So consider doing that and helping us out.
On the Amazon Prime Twitch Prime thing, if you link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime, there's also a bunch of other really cool stuff you get. You get some stuff in Overwatch and Hero to the Storm, some other Blizzard games. There's neat stuff you get. So if you're an Amazon Prime member, upgrade your Twitch game, and you'll get some swag.
Yeah, I forgot about
that stuff. So
yeah, I forgot about that. There are Twitch gives you stuff in return for that, like in-game items and rewards and stuff like that. So it's worth it, in my opinion. It helps us out and it helps you out. So, but anyway, the question walk is from, again, Gardemange, who's asked a question already today. But and guys, there's plenty of room for questions, so keep throwing them in there. Put a bunch of question marks at the beginning of your question so I can see it easily, and I'm adding it to the list, and I'll get to it. I promise. We got almost a whole hour that we can still ask questions. But he says, walk. He says, why do you think there hasn't been a cast book yet? Did the meta plots just move away from it without a chance to do a focused book?
Boy, tonight on a very special 14-hour episode of... No, the cast book has always been tricky, and there have been talks about it in the past that have been floated here or there. You'll have information for the cast in pretty much 3 sections right now. The original Neo-Anarchist Guide to North America. The entire country got turned upside down and turned around in, the Shadows Across North America. And then we came back and touched on it again in Dirty Tricks for the Dirty South section. Those are pretty much the 3 things you will ever find about the cast. And when I did Dirty Tricks, I touched on every state. So like 10 states had never been mentioned in Shadowrun history before. So I got to put a big blazy note on there. As for why it hasn't had its own book in the past, I couldn't tell you. There are chunks that have popped up in things. Atlanta as a setting has always been big. In the Cyber Pirates and their spin-offs, New Orleans has always been a huge thing. So you'll get areas that have a lot of interest, but you've never had the entire nation in focus. And I know I, for one, would love to do a book on it at some point. Lord knows Texas alone can handle half a book. Rusty.
Yeah, and that T-Cut, this is a question that has actually been asked in some form or another a couple of times already. T-Cut even asked specifically about if there's any lore for DFW in the 2070s.
So
nope.
Can I
there really kind of isn't.
Put a little thing in here? Like, here's what needs to happen. Like, if something ever came out, like an ebook or something, that had to do specifically with the cast, would you all buy it? And would you buy it so much that it would influence the people above to make more of it?
Yes.
And if that's the case, then we'll hold you to it and just keep crossing your fingers.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
If you see any Catalyst members at any convention, go up to them and go, "Hey guys, you know what we would love? A book about the cast." And see, we will. And believe me, we couldn't wait to write it. They tell us what to write. They pay our checks. We do what they tell us. But if they tell us to write it, there's going to be a dog pile trying to fight that thing.
Yeah,
we want in.
And part of the answer, which touches on Opti's thing, like, please buy it, is that traditionally speaking, setting-only books, they don't sell.
No.
It's kind of like the old player's handbook versus GM's book thing, where to run a game, kind of every player needs the core book and one GM needs the GM book, right? And it's kind of the same thing where just setting books by themselves don't tend to do well, which is kind of the impetus for the whole Deep Shadows line, where we say, hey, Spy Games is about espionage, and then also we're going to talk about places where espionage happens, and also here's gear for espionage and spells and adept powers, and we keep kind of trying to build. But that's part of it. Is I'm sure that if setting books in general sold better, there would be more setting books, and we would have had a book specifically on the cast.
Do you happen to know,
but
if adventure modules sell better than setting books?
No,
It's about the same.
I
Anything
know that
that's not
yeah.
player oriented does not sell as well.
Well, that's why I asked about
Yeah.
adventures, is because I mean that's an adventure for players. I thought maybe that would sell better, but
Players remember the adventures, but the players are not the ones buying it. So
fair.
If you have 6 or 7 people at a table, only one of them is going to buy the setting and or adventure, while all of them are going to be buying the player
the gear
focused
book
stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's a big
gun books sell like crazy.
Yeah. And that some of it's not at all unique to Shadowrun. I'm not poking fun at the Shadowrun community, but I think it's perhaps especially stark within the Shadowrun community with their jokes about just here's a fat book of guns.
So what we got to do
and,
is similar to how Cutting Aces spent some time talking about what was that part of the world that it spent a lot of time talking about?
Constantinople.
Yes, Constantinople. We need a
Not
similar
Constantinople.
sort of.
I know. Come on, everybody.
Can't go back there.
We need a similar sort of book that talks about locations in the good old South.
Yeah, and so
I think one of the things that that players don't necessarily recognize, though, is that those setting books are not just for GMs. The setting books are really information that everybody from those settings would know. So if you're
Right.
building a character, like, please invest in the lore. If you're building an elf from one of the tiers, go grab one of the tier books and really do it up. Give Rusty some extra smiles, whatever.
Yes.
But yeah, just know what you're talking about so that you can RP your character better, and everybody's going to benefit from that.
Yeah.
And really, you can tell who is invested in the lore when they sit down at a table. Not that Shadowrun can't be played without it, but like it really does add something when you're dropping bits of lore, from a character perspective at a table. It really enhances the game, I think.
Well,
marchers.
there's plot hooks. There's story opportunities from the GM. It's the more invested you are in your character and where they're from, and the more your GM knows that, the more of the spotlight you're going to get, even
Right.
in like a purely mercenary way. If you care more about your character than the guy sitting next to you, if you give the GM more to work with, you're going to get more out of the game. Everybody wins. So
I think bottom line is the Catalyst is a business. They are, they have to make money to
They
stay in
certainly
business.
are.
And we won't go any further down that road. But the point is, like, vote with your wallet about what kind of stuff you'd like to see. So
Especially if an ebook focused on the cast comes out. Especially vote with your wallet when that happens. If that happens.
I can't wait to pirate that cast
If
book.
that-
Like that doesn't help.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
punch people in the face if they pirate any kind of particular ebook that comes out
Right.
Yeah,
focused on the cast.
as a reminder for people, like Bull is a literal Amish cab driver. He drives a cab in Amish country.
I thought that was a joke when
No,
the first
no,
15
he really
times.
does.
I know that. I thought it was a
Yeah.
joke the first 15 times I heard it.
Yeah, I run a cash register at Walmart. We are not rolling in the big dough, and everyone's going, oh, I can't afford the new book. Trust me, if I wasn't getting paid from Catalyst, I couldn't afford to buy some of the books myself. I have to save up for a while. I understand the financial hit, but it is a teeny tiny section of the overall industry, and we need the love and we need the figures to show to people above to go, look, there is an interest in this. Please let us make more about this. So I know it can be expensive at times. I know it's a little hard, but please, we have to beg you to buy this at a store. Don't buy it, download it from like Drive Through RPG. get legitimate copies. That's I know
Yeah,
it's expensive at times, but please, we are not making bank over here.
Yeah.
So
and
we do this for the love of the game.
it's not that we get paid more or anything if the sales happen. Like we don't get royalties off the average ebook or whatever. It's just that the powers that be will let us write another ebook like that.
Right, exactly.
If they do well.
Like I said, vote with your wallet about the kind of stuff that you'd like to see, and you'll see more of it. But I got a question from Dan the Man Games, who also threw us a subscription after I pleaded for it.
Yay.
So I'm definitely asking his question, which is, so for my question, it's about everyone's favorite topic, CFD, that I just did a Six World podcast episode about that. I was billing it as the least controversial topic in Shadowrun. I haven't finished reading, this is Dan the Man Games again, I haven't finished reading current books, so I might be a bit behind, but is there going to be a big resolution to both the Monad plot and the Boston Outbreak? Is there going to be a resolution to those?
The Boston outbreak is going to have a more definitive conclusion. Boston will shift afterwards. The Monad situation will come to a sort of head in Dark Terrors, but CFD may or may not conclude completely. It might just be one of those things like Deus, right? I mean, like the acute situation might be dealt with, but it might linger on depending on which way future writers take it.
Sure.
Yeah. You always leave a trap door.
But there's an upcoming book coming out, which Jason has talked about, called Dark Terrors, which definitely addresses the current acute CFD problem as a meta plot. So yes, there is a conclusion coming, I think, in the way that Dan was asking.
Boy, Dark Terrors. Boy, I wonder if they will talk about horrific things from other dimensions there.
So many things are going to be cool. I think Jason also mentioned that the Elder Gods are going to be in Dark Terrors. CFD are going to be in Dark Terrors.
It's mostly puppies and kittens, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
all the kittens.
Yeah.
So many kittens.
There's going to be a lot of cool stuff. See some Sealy stuff in Dark Terrors. I don't remember what else. Yeah, Dark Terrors is going to be a super legit book. If you liked Forbidden Arcana, Dark Terrors is definitely going to be something that you want to pick up.
And,
Even if you didn't.
You still want to pick it up.
I didn't even write anything for Dark Terrors, and I know it's going to be a good book.
All right, I've got a question from Hassan, who asks, whatever happened to Fucci?
Still around. It's greatly reduced from what it was, but it still exists. It's shoot, I can't remember who's got ownership. I think the name
had some, and
it was split between 3 corps, but Neonet had some, and Rocco had some, Shiawase had some, but one of them still runs a Fucci subsidiary, and I just don't remember which is the 2 Japan corps.
I feel like it's Shiawase who has the Fucci subsidiary still.
Yeah,
I
did a podcast recently on Neonet, and that deals with Fucci a great deal. So if you're interested, I can't recall the stuff on the top of my head, but if you're interested in that particular bit of lore, and Fucci's a huge presence in Shadowrun. So
you can't recall it off the top of your head? You mean when you record your podcast, you're not just free thought, kind of just going off the cuff?
No, apparently Opti and me, the person and the character are not the exact same person. So no, I don't have perfect recall on all that stuff.
Yeah, but don't forget, even if the AAA megacorp Fucci is no more and hasn't been for 15, 20 years now, like individual branches of Fucci are totally still running, and there's still Fucci security, there's still Fucci products coming out.
You can still get a Fucci cyber deck, know, with the Fucci logo on.
Yeah. So if you've got a character that grew up Fucci or whatever, or you've got an old Shadowrunner that swears by his old Fucci gear, man, go nuts with it. It doesn't matter that Shiawas bought some and it merged some with Renraku and yada yada. These things are of big enough size that they've got a certain amount of economic momentum behind them, and that brand recognition is totally a thing in universe.
Yeah, cross-applied technology still exists in some form. It's the corporations are basically cockroaches. You can't completely kill them.
It's
And
just
in fact, the last corporate book, again, shill, the intro fiction of that is set in a Fucci subsidiary, the entire thing. And some people blew up later going, these terrible freelancers, Fucci died so long ago, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's still around. It's just not a AAA megacorp. It's just a chunk of a greater whole now.
Yeah. Same thing with Truman Tech in Chicago. You know what I mean? Like these corporations made a big splash in first and second edition, and they don't go away. Their ghosts linger.
well, the money just goes to someone else. That's all. It's just there's a change in, where the buck stops, but the brand itself is still definitely going to be floating around and sucking up, consumers.
The most
hard-earned
important real world example I can give you is why I used to be able to get a pair of Chuck Taylor All-Stars for less than $20 until they got bought out by an overseas corporation, and now they're like between $30 and $40 each for, a pair of canvas slapped on some rubber.
Yep.
Yeah.
Still the best shoes though.
You hipster douche.
It makes me sad to hear that. I got
You like
back.
what you like, Dick.
You're just you're like, I like.
My
them
wife
before
still
they
wears-
sold
Before
out."
they were never not cool though.
As a proper Southerner, I go barefoot. Thank you very much.
Another thing that Whack doesn't do is shoes.
Shoes.
Who do that?
All right, I got another question
Shoes are for
from
Sunday church.
I got another question from our friend Cred Stick in the chat. He says, it's been 7 years since Shadowrun Sixth World Almanac. Any chance of update all in one timeline definition again?
I'll give the same answer.
Love.
If some kind of book ever comes out via ebook that is similar to what you want, make sure you buy the crap out of that ebook. And who knows what might happen in the future if you buy tons and tons of that ebook.
Yeah,
Sixth World Almanac is like the prettiest, most important book that like nobody bought.
Yeah.
Like we were literally giving them away the year of Shadowrun.
Is that
Right.
true? Because
Yes.
that's one of the
Like,
that's one of the ones that really stands out in my mind. That's funny to hear.
One of the best books.
At the Gen Con booth, they had like a people-sized stack of Sixth World Almanac booths that they were just giving these books away, hardcover, full-color books. They were just giving them to anybody that came by and got like a demo of Shadowrun. Like at all Gen Con weekend, they were just like, "Hey, you want a book?" And it's just because it's a great book that's got a lot of information in it, and the people that love it, but its sales were just not great, and it's a shame because it's such an important book that answers so many questions, but yeah, it just did not sell well.
No.
I still go
So-
to it for reference on stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
If you ever get the opportunity, if any kind of ebook ever hits the market that has anything to do with like an almanac or something, make sure you buy it so bad so that more can come out.
Yeah. Because, like, I love Rusty like a brother, but I will knife that man for an opportunity to write a Sixth World Almanac update.
I will
Believe-
knock that man for way less.
All right, I got another question from I had it open here. Oh, Murphy Tech, which sounds like the best single A corporation name ever. Murphy Tech asks, it's a magic related question, or sort of speaking of dark terrors, how fundamentally do insect spirits differ from other spirits? I mean, because we've got things that are, I'm expanding at this point. We've got things that also do possession stuff. We've got things that do lots of weird dark things that overlap. But how do they differ fundamentally from everything else? What makes them what they are?
I've got this one if no one else does, but I've been gobbling lots of conversation. Anybody else want in there?
You just gobble
I'll-
these bugs up too.
I'll let Whack take the more detailed explanation, but there is a big difference between Earth-based spirits and every other spirit. And I'll
Yes.
let Whack take that. from
So
here.
when you say earth-based spirits, you mean spirits founded in like the elements of Earth, right?
Things having to do with the Earth,
Like
things that
like
are
air,
embedded
water,
in the,
fire.
Yeah, but not only that, but also like the the spirits that have to do with belief systems or particular
Okay,
places or animals, like things that resonate deeply with the population of Earth that are embedded in their mind and their memory and their culture. Those are Earth-based spirits, including Earth, Wind, Water, Fire, Heart. You're going to have a different relationship with those spirits than the spirits that are wholly and completely alien.
Sure. Well, I
one
would
of
make
which
the
is the
argument that
insect spirits.
insects and bugs are embedded pretty firmly in my mind constantly. I'm terrified of them. But I'm going to
Yes.
stop you
Well, no,
because that was a
that's the whole
joke
point.
response.
That's the whole point. You're absolutely right. That's the whole point. We are afraid of insects. One reason is because they are so completely and totally other than us. Like insects don't cuddle, insects don't interact or have desires in any of the same ways that that other living things do, or we don't have a relationship with them like we do any of the other earth-based spirits, and that actually lends to why insect spirits are so different. They are completely, totally alien and other in their motivations and what they want. So I'll let Whack take it from there.
Yeah, if you've got more, Whack, do go on.
I do. First of all, on things from around the area, ghost trains, baby, ghost trains. Secondly, I am so sad that Opti would say you have never pet a bumblebee.
God
You
damn
have
it, Whack.
never rubbed a fuzzy little bumblebee and went, "How you doing, little guy?"
No,
Never?
how is it that you've not done any other thing that normal people do, and yet you have these weird things like I go barefoot and cuddle bumblebees? Like what?
Well,
You've lived on. Maybe Whack is an insect spirit. He's completely and totally alien to the way I understand life.
I'm
He's
feeling
1 million Ant-Man.
Yep. I'm eyes in my eyes, or ants in my eyes, Johnson. How do you do? Come on down, buy my TVs. No, but no, it's a little hard to describe, but also really easy. If you think of Earth as a neighborhood, everyone who lives on the block is similar to one another. Earth has the astral field around it, the mana field,
Whack.
and
Except
Yeah.
Whack.
except me. I don't belong. I'm the cyber zombie. But so everyone around there has the same kind of astral signature. But then there's the railroad tracks over here that separate this neighborhood from stuff further away. Now, some of that is close to the astral plane, like again the plane of fire, the plane of water, and so on. And some of it is a little further away because it's a little more esoteric. But then you get to the big part, which is the infamous chasm in the bridge. The chasm is the delineation of everything that comes from Earth's mana field and from Earth's astral energy is within this little island that's surrounded by a chasm. There is dimensional energy and magical energy beyond that that has no connection to Earth energy whatsoever. It comes from some other source. Some people have theorized it's kind of run over from when we get too full, it goes there. But that's where you'll find, non-Euclidean geometry and things that break your mind if you read about it. And that's where you'll find insect spirits are this completely alien, have nothing to do with this thing from beyond. And they try to cross that chasm to here so they can feed off our energy because, well, we're delicious. And so they are not from here, so they operate on a much different level than other spirits do.
Sure. Is it possible that if we could just all get along with the insect spirits, then we could coexist peacefully?
No.
You, sir, would be wonderfully set as a current Aries spokesperson because let me tell you, Aries is forward-looking on this whole bringing the bugs into frame message. They are down with the buzz.
Well, I've always felt a sort of kinship with Damian Knight, so.
As well you should. And the
You look
in
very
fact-
similar. So handsome and strapping
I
Not
don't
long-
like to brag,
Stunning.
but
and assholey.
now he plays a mean game of chess.
You
You should
that's all.
see the things that Bobby posts on my Facebook. They're like super negative all the time. He's like
Aw.
chronically negative on my Facebook.
everyone's always talking about how great you are. I just gotta, knock you down a couple notches every once in a while. Keep you grounded.
You absolutely do.
But Aries Consumer Products a couple years ago, in fact, started doing test marketing of an old flavor of food product that just kind of went vanishing in the early 2050 era. And it's
Oriental flavored ramen.
no, sadly. Um, but
My-
crud, I should have had notes written down. I've totally
Tastes-
forgotten the name of it.
Tastes like real Orientals.
Oh,
Like,
that could be very good or very bad. It depends.
it's always been like the most racist flavor. Like, taste the exotic Orient
I
for
feel
39
like,
cents.
I feel like Oriental can easily be a descriptor of a thing, not a person, Russell.
Well, yes, it's
Which,
much like
which you
Scotch
just
versus-
totally did.
I'm just,
Scotch versus Scottish. It's
All
a
right.
whole other thing.
I'm
But
just saying.
I have more questions. And
okay.
guys, keep them coming. We've got about 25 more minutes before I'm gonna call it a night on this. So if you've got questions you want to answer, get them in. I can work them in. The question I have here is actually from Eric Demage. He says he wants to know, what does the Global Sandstorms corporate logo look like?
It blows.
I'll let you know when we get a
Zing.
cool artist to do it.
Yeah, that's an art director question, not a freelance writer question.
And art
But
is
if I had to,
expensive.
guess, it would be
A big globe
man.
covered
no,
in
it'd
sand.
be like sphinxes and stuff, like those
Yeah.
old Babylonian type sphinxes. Like they kind of reach back beyond the what am I trying to say? Beyond the Islamic age, you know, and kind of
Oh, yeah.
grab all their different heritages and bring them forward. So that's what their Matrix host is fashioned after. It's a bunch of that old Persian type stuff.
Right. So another question actually from Eric as well, and the reason I'm going to ask this, I know he is very excited about topics related to the Shadowrun Tarot, and he wants
And
to
Eric
know.
can ask any question he wants. Man, that guy's got so much street cred in my book.
That's the truth. That's absolutely the truth. Eric's amazing. He wants to know about a specific card. Hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about when I ask this, but he says, is the coin in the Ace of Coins tarot card made of the giant gold nugget loaf we are used to purchase Seder Krupp?
Whack, take it away.
I'm going to say no comment about that because I'm not involved with the tarot plot line, but I've heard rumors. And
I will say that it is left vague on purpose, but you are not completely off the wall to suggest that.
That's a good answer. So Echo Chernik, who of course did all the art for the tarot deck, how much was she involved in actually shaping the narrative behind all those cards, you know? Or was she just given the stuff and then, you know, told to run with it?
I think we have to pass on this question. I think that's going to get us in too much trouble.
Okay. That's
Like,
intriguing.
No, it's yeah, I don't think it's
Yeah, it's too much of a backstage process.
Sure,
and
sure.
tiptoeing towards NDA
Sure.
stuff. A little bit of both. You know, it was very much a kind of group thing between Shadowrun writers and art director and Echo Chernik as artist.
Yeah.
And you know, there's lots going on there.
He's an amazing artist, by the way. Holy
Yeah,
cow!
yeah.
difficult. difficult
This
to
is
say
Echo
which-
art
yeah.
behind me right now.
Some things are left open on purpose for future writers and players to interact with and forge in whatever way they want to. So there are certain things that are kind of going in a particular direction, and then there are other things which will get connected along the way.
Where
I
the
guess
rock,
we'll leave it there. Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
rock meets the sky.
Sure.
Fair. Yes.
Unexiled has just asked a question in the chat. He says, so bringing totally new players to Shadowrun, what are some recommended lore books to get their mind into the world? So I'm going to ask each one of you recommend one book. I'm limiting you to one book. Start with Rusty.
Latest Seattle source book.
Okay. Seattle source book. Opti.
The complete transcripts of the Neo-Anarchist podcast. No, just kidding. Six World Almanac. We already talked about that,
Oh,
but
nice.
Six World Almanac is amazing.
That's a good one. And Walk.
Oh, torn, because on the one hand, I want to say Neat, which is an amazingly good novel that I can't promote enough.
So who? It's a great novel, huh? Who wrote that?
I don't know. I've really got to look at the
That ego
title. It's,
stroke.
but in terms of source books, I'm gonna go back further to my.
For those who
personal
don't
favorite
know,
book.
Russell Zimmerman wrote it. That's the joke. Um,
Uh, but no, to go back to my personal favorite book, the one that absolutely owns me on a regular basis is still Shadowbeat from first edition.
I heard that wasn't like that's really hard to find now. That particular
It
book.
is. It
Oh.
had a small run, and it didn't sell well, and the people who have it love it and aren't willing to part with it. So,
Everybody
but
who's read it is like, that's my favorite book.
but yeah, PDFs are now available. So go to DriveThruRPG, download them from there.
Oh, is that
and
true? Okay.
You can,
Cool.
Yeah, and they are cheap and they are awesome, and you will
Yeah.
drip with goodness. And I pull from that on a regular basis.
Awesome. So I've got a question here from. Sorry, I accidentally closed something, and
Oh,
I'm opening
All
it
right,
really
let's
fast.
start over.
welcome.
Turn it
folks,
off,
to a special
restart.
12-hour
Welcome to
episode
the
of-
Shadowrun. No, I got it right here. It's from Norbert, and asks about Ghostwalker. Says, where did Ghostwalker come from, and why is he here?
Like, are you talking about like in the game? Where did he come from? I guess that's the only real answer. That
We're doing
Um,
lore, so it's lore thing.
Yeah, like
Ghostwalker was
within.
a,
I'm assuming within the universe. Where did Ghostwalker come
Yeah,
from, and why
Ghostwalker-
is he here?
Ghostwalker is was an Earth Dawn dragon, the brother of Dunkelzahn. And it had a pretty decent effect on Fourth World Earth Dawn stuff. And when Dunkelzahn died and the DC Rift was opened, behind the scenes stuff happened and freed Ghostwalker from his imprisonment on a metaplane. And he essentially flew through the DC Rift, found out his brother was dead, and kind of went ape nuts. That's pretty much the
Yeah, for
Sure.
those that don't know, Shadowrun is the sixth world. We are living right now in the fifth world, like real life. Earth Dawn was the fourth world. It was a game that is now owned by different companies and stuff. They were never mechanically compatible, which I think is a damn shame. But canonically, the Earth Dawn fantasy RPG was the backstory of Shadowrun. And that's where some of the great dragons and immortal elves and stuff like that come from. In Earth Dawn, Mountain Shadow was the name of who we know as Dunkelzahn, and Icewing was his brother. And Icewing is now known as Ghostwalker in the Shadowrun timeline. So there are all kinds of old twists and turns and ties and familial bonds and stuff like that. But yeah, he came rolling out, and I guess the answer to where he's from is Earth Dawn, you know.
Yeah, right.
Although, since Earth Dawn is now owned by a separate company than Catalyst, things that were published concretely in a Shadowrun product, we still have ownership of, we can still use. However, Earth Dawn stuff that has never officially crossed over, we can't. So you will
we
never
can't
see
use by name.
right. We can't use the name Icewing. We can't use the name Mountain Shadow. There are hints towards these things, but you will never see any concrete 100% linkage unless the licenses for both are under one corporate banner again.
Right.
Sort
But
of.
you should note that even when they were linked, the actual names didn't get used. I mean, there wasn't a lot of official name crossover in the first place.
Right, because
Exactly.
there's probably, I mean, there's only a handful of creatures
There's
in the world
6,000 or
that
7,000 years of language difference, to justify why they wouldn't use the same names anyway.
Yeah, and dragons and immortal elves are basically the only ones that may know the connection there. But got another
Sort of.
question because I'm gonna blaze us to the next one because we're getting close to the end here. Tagashi Jack asks if you guys, I'm gonna start with Wak here since I started with Rusty last time. If you had one major event to remove from the timeline, meaning that it would have never happened, what would you remove?
Holy cats. There are both a ton of them and none of them because every flavor is part of the Shadowrun salad, and it is hard to remove them. But out of everything, I would say the hardcore lean towards wireless nature, simply because you took a key element, which was a team of Shadowrunners have to break into a secure facility, you plug into an area to download information, and you turn that into, oh, I'm going to be in Ethiopia, and I'm going to log in and cut to the Ares mainframe because everything is online and on wireless all the time, and there's no concept of offline storage anymore. And so I would remove that if possible.
Okay, good answer. I think we could talk about that, but back and forth.
I know,
but I know we're running short on time. But I think that's a really interesting answer. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting answer. Opti, what about you?
I'm gonna piggyback on Whack and not necessarily what he said, but the way he said it. And that wasn't necessarily an event, but I don't like the proliferation of AI. I wish we could go back to AIs being kind of bad guys and big major threats instead of just having them just exist all the time everywhere. I thought that was a neat thing to have in the background, and just like technomancers. But when you bring them forward, it just, I don't know. It felt like it kind of, I don't know, dumbed down. Dumbed down is the wrong word. I don't mean to offend.
Diluted.
Diluted. Yeah, that's probably a good way to say it. Yeah, it's maybe a thing for NPCs, but there's certain things when you make them PC, it just becomes a little bit problematic for me. So I'd say AIs.
Okay. Yeah. And what about you, Rusty?
I do not know. I'm legitimately flailing here. I don't want to just copy Wack's answer with kind of the tech change.
Sure.
But I feel like that kind of played into it. And I'm trying to think if there's a single given canonical in-universe event that might have been some of that paradigm shift that we've been discussing between SR 1 to 3 and SR 4, with that shift towards jackpoint and stuff. And I know that you could call it, like the Crash 2.0 with that series of deaths and the new formation of a different sort of jackpoint meta voice in source books.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the Crash 2.0 was actually pretty cool and was not really to blame for that. Like, it wasn't the Crash 2.0 that caused it,
Right.
I know where it came from, so.
Because it's been a very meta, out of character shift in tone.
What about the year of the comet?
No,
that's not it. It's
I actually don't mind it.
You don't? Okay. Yeah.
I care for the search stuff myself, but that's personal.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I regret the most the paradigm shift away from kind of punk, fun stuff.
Sure.
The
Okay,
first three
that's fair.
editions.
Yeah.
But I can't think of an in-universe, fractal point that caused that. So
Fields
I'm having trouble. Well, I don't know though, because I still liked Fields of Fire.
Oh, it was awesome.
I just liked Fields of Fire for mercs, not for everyone.
Sure.
Yeah.
fair.
I liked it. I liked it when it was a subsect of the Shadowrun community that were like the tactical kids, that were all, kind of trying to be indistinguishable from the corpse and stuff like that. But I didn't like that taking over the shadows.
Right.
So like I said, I can't think of an in-universe event really.
Yeah,
can I change my answer a little bit?
Uh-oh.
Sure.
The event that I maybe I have problems with it is the Great Dragon Civil War. In my mind it doesn't. It could have. I don't want to shoot. I don't want to crap on anybody because the freelancers are all my friends.
It didn't go the way you would have liked it to go.
Yeah, and I don't think it was justified enough to warrant every dragon taking a side against every other dragon. It just didn't. I mean, these characters have existed for millennia on millennia, and then for like a 2-year event to be like, you know what, let's just all fight. Like it.
Like suddenly, yeah.
And again, not like it couldn't happen. I mean, because
It's
stuff happens in families, but like, letting meta humanity call the shots for the dragons seemed.
yeah.
So wait,
I don't know.
did I miss something? What was the event that sparked that?
There was a number of events. Go ahead, Wack.
I was about to say, I just wrote a huge post on this the other day. It goes around with well, it started with the dissection of a dead dragon during the Yucatan Aslan peace process. One of the dragons there was a bombing. Some negotiators died. One of the dragons there turned in and narked on a second dragon who's like, wait, what do you mean I'm the one who did the bombing? Verified it with his own magic, said, yep, that's the guy. He was passed over as a part of the peace process and as an apology for all the deaths, was executed, then was dissected, and the dissection was recorded and released into the Matrix. And it was basically a way of humans going, hey, look, we can kill dragons too, and now look at all this big mysterious stuff that we've got access to. Sirurg the Destroyer went, we don't play that game, and declared war on Aslan and began savagely attacking. Hestaby stepped up to the UN and said, hey, this whole great dragon thing, Sirurg doesn't speak for us. He's on his own. If you guys want to, track him down and kill him for all this monstrous stuff, we're cool with that. And then Lofwyr stepped in and went, Hestaby doesn't get to talk for all of us. She's not the lore master. She's not the king of dragons. Not cool. So he and Hestaby had a big positioning war over who would be the more influential great dragon, while Sirurg just said, I don't care about politics, I'm just killing people. And Lofwyr's brother was like, I'm on that train, I'm going to go eat some humans too. And everything spiraled horribly out of control at that point.
Which, and I will say this, everything leading up to that was like really golden.
Hold on, Opti, I'm going to jump in just to tell you guys, I got to step away for a second because my daughter just woke up. But keep talking about the Dragon Civil War and everything. I'll be right back.
Sure.
Yeah, so I want to say the events leading up to that, I think, were really well orchestrated, and a lot of that is really, really cool, like lore stuff. I just, again, don't like the idea of the great dragons being so influenced and bringing metahumans into their affairs the way that they did.
My issue with it is that instead of immediately speaking up and Lofwyr having a hissy fit about her speaking to the UN, it should have been like, oh, that's a slight that I'll remember to rub in her nose 500 years from now.
Yeah.
Like it was just, it felt like the events leading up to it make perfect sense if you're not talking about dragons.
Right. That's
and
right. It wasn't great dragons.
It felt like,
absolutely right. Yeah.
It made me feel like when a couple of wargamers flip the table and start throwing punches, right? Like it's great dragons playing a multi-millennial, chess game against one another, where like all of humanity is like these two pawns and one knight, right? That I up jumped or whatever, like that's how they think of us. And then instead it was Hestaby and Lofwyr flipping the table and throwing punches,
And
so
the one event. Go ahead.
To me, yeah, just like I said, but it's hard to pin down one event again because each event makes sense. Just to me, they don't make sense for dragons.
The one event that I actually really, really don't like, now that we've zeroed in, I do not like that they killed Alamace. That really bothers me.
Oh yeah, that was a shame. I had plans for him.
Yeah, Alamace is way too cool. Lofwyr's brother, he goes way too far back. He's way too powerful, and I just hate that he was sacrificed for the, I want to say rule of cool, but like it wasn't even that cool. Yeah, that's
But
yeah,
I'm like that. I don't.
Humans, so yeah.
Well,
James says they should have killed Lofwyr, which would have had way more profound impacts. But.
Hey, I pitched for it, so I didn't get approved, but I made the move. I got another one for you though, Opti. I know that we've had trouble on this one. UMT, Unified Magic.
Yes, I'm not a huge fan, but I do like what we did with Forbidden Arcana around that, so I'm not
Yeah.
complaining too bad.
Exactly. We boomeranged around that one. So
But see, I have trouble saying that I wish UMT never happened
that's
because
true.
it makes sense from a game design perspective
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
so much. But it was another kind of retcon attempt. And sometimes those are great and they can streamline a game and make the kind of out of character experience better for people.
Mhm.
But sometimes they don't. So I think
And-
I dug UMT when it was a theory. And I dig it now that we've dialed it back to being a
I
theory.
love the
But-
theory of UMT. That's something that really interests me. But I get why people are annoyed by it because of what it did to
And
things.
Rusty and I spent 18 hours discussing UMT on the way to Gen Con last year, and how, from a game design perspective, he really likes the flattening out of Magic, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
really busted a
Well,
hissy fit for 18 hours about how I didn't like it.
Mechanically,
answer
it's
is,
gorgeous. But
I like it as an option. Is where I'm at. I like it being a theory. It doesn't have to be a fact. It needs to be an option. And
Right.
from a game design perspective, I think that's awesome. And I think we've reached a kind of decent compromise with the latest updates and ways to tweak how unified Magic is. I say we like I did anything for it, but yeah, I from a game design perspective, I dig the idea of Magic is just Magic. It works the same for everybody versus no, I choose that my Magic works this way. I get some pluses, I get some minuses. I like it as a toggle or as a slider switch.
Sure.
Um,
But I'm going to ask one more question before we go to avoid
Oh.
us recreating this 18-hour discussion you guys had. The question is, and this is the last one for the night. We're gonna go after this, and thank you guys. But the question from Laszlo Zingo, who joined us late, and he said so when asking a question. He
Hey,
said
Laszlo.
joining late. Yeah, he's a common name around the community here. He asks, throughout Shadowrun, the term ghost is used instead of god in the slang. What's up with that, and is it related to the Great Ghost Dance? If so, what does it mean?
It's only tangentially related to the Great Ghost Dance, in that I think it's a more broad term that kind of reflects the pluralism of Shadowrun. Not everybody believes in God, but everybody kind of has a general idea that spirits are out there. So it just becomes a little bit more of a flexible term to use.
kind of a generic exclamation or curse. I'm still a humongous fan of Jesus, Buddha, and Zeus as a go-to exclamation, kind of irreverently covering your bases,
Sure,
that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think it's I think capital G Ghost, when it's not a Razor Boy or Street Samurai using it as an oath, is just kind of a generic kind of great spirit that provides magic from far beyond kind of generic term, like, okay, somebody's up there, but I think if you find a Razor Girl, a Gillette, a Street Samurai, a whatever, using it, they might be swearing to Ghost Who Walks Inside of the immortal trinity of Dodger Ghost and Sally Sung. So they could be
Sure.
hearkening back to the iconic, first edition badass Street Samurai, where if it's something like, I swear to Ghost, I will end you on these spurs. Like that could be, some street slang for, that sort of thing, for just like, I swear by the fucking patron saint of Street Samurai, I will gut you, so I think, contextually it could be used either way.
Yeah.
As a third one on that one, it also goes into the street slang, which, good lord, do we need to use more and bring back and throw at people, because
Agreed.
the fourth edition use of common everyday slurs and curse words was awful, and I loved the entire first edition page-long dictionary of just street slang, and I wrote a new version of that for 5th edition, which didn't make it into the book, but it's twice as long and full of goodies. And so Ghost is just part and parcel of in there with Ome and everything, Gillettes and all this other stuff. It's,
no doubt.
It's a defining feature.
And Sixth World cursing, like we hear plenty of Drek and Frag, but I think we need to bring back Hoop.
Oh yeah.
We do use hoops
Yeah.
sometimes. I
I
enjoy
like Hoop
mixing
Fragger.
in.
That makes me happy.
I enjoy mixing real life curses with older ones. The last novel I wrote has a bunch of different point of view characters, and the last thing I did before I sent it to the editor was meticulously going back and doing searches for different curse words and making sure that all the different characters were cursing differently, so that the right
Sure, okay.
characters were using frag versus not, and stuff like that. So I like to do it as almost a generational thing, or
Oh,
to
yeah.
show something about certain characters and their perspective and things like that.
Right,
But yeah,
cause your main character in your stuff, who's I've had a couple of drinks tonight. The name escapes me. What's the guy's name?
it's
Jimmy Kincaid. That's right. Okay, so but he's very like old school and noir feeling,
Jamie
right?
Concord.
He's the
Jamie
famous
Crank,
Elven street
Jimmy
mage,
Crack
Jamie-
Corn, and I don't care.
Jamie Concord. No, Jimmy Kincaid.
But he
has-
uses old school cursing,
yes,
right?
He is a retro character, partially for reasons to do with some chips and some addictions and some
Sure.
old stuff. But he is specifically modeled after the old kind of noir lantern-jawed PI, so he uses real-world slang, but like people give him a hard time for it.
Mhm.
And they call him grandpa. He's an elf. Like he looks 25.
Sure.
But like people, poke fun at it, and he pokes fun right back. Some of my favorite stuff is Jimmy Kincaid hanging out with Gentry, the hyperactive parkour free runner elf fanboy from the SR5 fiction.
Right.
Jimmy has Gentry as kind of a sidekick in one of the books, and the two of them are just such opposites in their mindset and Shadow. So I like to mix in old stuff and the new slang in Shadow terms, but I like to do it in a way that it says something about a character, which I don't know if other people even notice that I do it that way, but yeah, it just tickled me that, the last thing I did before sending it to the editor was like, I need to make sure that my characters are cussing right. And like this is my life now. This is my creative focus is who is cussing appropriately for the setting. So
Yeah.
And I like to think
Bull
also
versus
that
Bush.
I also like to think that there's certain areas of the sixth world that will use more of the old slang than the new slang. So Seattle, being as cosmopolitan as it is going to have a good mix of everything. But like Chicago, in my mind, I like to think of just because they've been so cut off for such a long time, they are always using more old shadow slang than anything else.
well, and there should definitely be a different urban patois everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
You should be using French or German or Spanish or Esperanto or Chinese, Mandarin versus,
Right.
but like you should be tossing in different languages with different curses in different places. Absolutely.
And
Which-
inventing some and removing some. Like
Yes.
no one uses
Yeah.
input and output anymore. But I mean, just in the modern world, we invented adulting. Adulting is a great word. I love that word.
Yeah. That
But
is a good one.
you got to invent new slang also
Yeah.
for everything.
Yeah, I just created a couple of new words. I was talking with these guys the other day, like, hey, do we have a word for this? And they're like, no, I don't think so. It's like, great, I'm gonna make one. And then Whack makes fun of me by posting weird YouTube videos.
All right. But I'm gonna stop us here. This was a lot of fun. Did you guys enjoy yourselves? I enjoyed.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, we should do
Would've
more
been-
of these.
Would have been
You see
better
a
if
little
I
bit?
didn't hate all you guys.
Yeah.
It's all right. I just don't like anybody here.
Well, we'll have to pay you more
Can we
next
do
time.
another one of these again sometime? These are fun.
Yeah, we
Oh, yeah.
should absolutely
I'll
do
do
more of
that
these.
sometime.
We had a good turnout and some great questions and everything. So I think we will get to do more of these in the future, and maybe we'll get some different people, different freelancers, because you guys were obviously, really difficult together and hard to get along with.
Yeah, Rusty and Whack are definitely replaceable in this rotation.
This is because I didn't apologize to you yet for blowing the theory discussion in Forbidden Arcana. I was planning on doing that and I didn't do it. Now I'm disinvited.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I've got to close it out, guys. So I'm going to cut you off. So thank you guys for showing up. Thank you so much. Remember that now that we're done here, to if anything, follow us on Twitch so you can find out when we make announcements on here or when we're going live with different shows. You'll get notified about that. If you've got the if you want to subscribe, that helps us out a ton. We love that. We'll be doing more with that in the future, but that helps us out a lot. And if you're an Amazon Prime person, then you might have a free one. You should check that out and send it our way. It'll help us out. I'd like to again thank some people. Relative D-Pod, Avenzi, I guess we could thank him, Damien, for throwing some cheers our way. T-Cut during the show. Also, we got some subscribers. Unexiled just told me in the chat that he's my oldest fan. And I think if what he means is true, is that's the guy who sent me the first email we got back when I did the Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast a long time ago. Got to meet him at Gen Con. It was a great time. Loved it.
It could be that, or he's like 97 years old.
Or I could be, literally 125 years old. But thank you guys, Dan the Man Games, who subscribed as well, and some other people that I'm not mentioning. So I shouldn't have started on this name thing because I'm going to leave someone out, and I just made some people mad. Sorry guys, but thank you guys for all the support. What do we got coming up on? I think next week on this day we've got Damien will be here a week from today doing some video game streams, and every Wednesday here on out probably. I think that's his plan. And but we do lots of stuff here. Head over to shadowcasters.network and check out the schedule for our Twitch stuff. Also, if you're looking, you can click on the image below. It's got our schedule for this month too. So we're currently working on what October's schedule is going to look like. So some cool, interesting stuff that I'm excited about. And I think we might work another one of these lore Q&As in. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So yep. Thank you guys, and bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.